Chairman, and Chairman Bernanke, welcome once again. I'd like to add my voice to that of the Chairman and the Ranking Member and say that although it is our responsibility to ask you tough questions, it doesn't mean that we do not appreciate your service. It does not mean we necessarily second-guess your judgment in exigent circumstances where we don't have all the facts, but certainly as members of Congress, we reserve the right to do so. First question I have, Mr. Chairman, is I have a very strong preference as we try as a nation to work out of our economic turmoil. I have a strong preference for the use of voluntary capital of investors over involuntary capital of taxpayers. Although I don't have any statistical evidence, I've spoken to many individuals and firms within the investment community, and the word that keeps on coming up over and over and over is certainty. We need certainty. We need certainty. We need certainty in legislation. We need certainty in regulation. I'm under the impression there are billions, if not trillions of dollars sitting on the sideline. But until policymakers in Congress put out a program and says, this is the program, people are still trying to figure out, am I going to get bailed out? Is my competitor going to get bailed out? Is my customer going to get bailed out? And I suppose in that vein, I'd like for you to comment generally, and unfortunately there's a two-part question here, but specifically I think you have embraced, at least in your testimony on the Senate side, you said something along the lines that the plan recently announced by Secretary Geithner would be quite helpful in stabilizing our economic situation. And I don't try to read too much into one-day swings in the market, but it was a bad one day when that was announced because I think the market viewed it as a non-announcement. And I heard one critic call it a $350 billion in search of a program. So the specific question would be, do you have details of the program that the rest of us do not have? Or do you believe that the market simply doesn't understand the clarity with which and precision in which it was presented? So there's a general and a specific question somewhere in there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman. On the uncertainty issue, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the fundamental source of the crisis is the collapse of the credit boom and the fact that banks and financial institutions are losing enormous amounts of money. Given the enormous losses, given the weakness of the economy, it would be surprising if investors felt that the situation was a safe one for them to be investing in. Having said that, I agree with you that more certainty in policy, the better, sooner the better, will be good for bringing more private capital back into the system. And I do believe that the Treasury program is an important step in that it is a comprehensive program. It has different components that, taken together and executed properly, I think will be very helpful in stabilizing the banking system and making it more attractive for private capital to come in. Your question, though, is was the plan that was announced a few weeks ago, was that a fully formed plan? Obviously it was not. It was a broad proposal, a conceptual proposal, which the Treasury put out to indicate the direction it wanted to go and to invite discussion with Congress and with the public. It was not entirely specific, obviously, and more details are being released as soon as the Treasury can do so. The Treasury, frankly, is understaffed, and the Federal Reserve and other agencies have been working with them as best we can to try to get the details together. Obviously, I've been in many of those discussions, and so I have some idea of where these things are going, and I find the directions very promising. But I'm not, at this point, able to tell you much because I'm still waiting, obviously, for the final decisions and for the Treasury to make those announcements. But there is, of course, a great deal of work being done to flesh out the general ideas that were presented initially.
Chairman Bernanke, we all know that those who do not learn the lessons of history are condemned to repeat them. And fortunately for the nation, we know that you are an astute student of economic history, particularly our own depression, but also Japan's lost decade. I have a copy of a speech that you gave before the Japanese Society of Monetary Economists back in May of '03, where you talk about the economic principle of Ricardian equivalence. And in that speech you said, in short, to strengthen the effects of fiscal policy would be helpful to break the link between expansionary fiscal actions today and increases in the taxes that people expect to pay tomorrow. You also indicated that the government's annual deficit, speaking of the Japan's government's annual deficit is now 8% of GDP and is a serious concern. Moreover, an aging Japanese population will add to these budgetary concerns. Are you in a position to comment on its application to our situation today?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Perhaps we could get that in writing at a later time, Mr. Chairman.
The deficits have significant consequences, and one of the consequences is the concerns about the future servicing costs of those deficits. I agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.